Hello, tech leaders. I'm Carol Palombini, psychologist and tech leadership coach, and this is my podcast, Tech Mind Insights. My mission is to be the change agent for tech leaders grappling with communication issues, imposter syndrome, burnout, and the complexities of the tech leadership roles. In this show, I interview leaders and consultants working in the tech space to provide you with real-world insights into the challenges of leadership. If you want to be part of the show or have questions you'd like me to ask my guests, just send me a message. And today, my guest is Adam Horner. Adam, welcome to my podcast.
Thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here.
So can you introduce yourself?
Sure. So I'm a CTO who's got about 10 years experience as a CTO. I graduated last century, so that gives me just under 30 years of experience in the industry, all of which in software development, but spread across a really wide variety of industries and also countries. So I've worked in the UK for about 20 years, then moved from there to Sweden now about 5 years ago. And I now work with customers across Europe and across the US as well.
And how long have you been working as a fractional CTO?
So I made that jump about 18 months ago. It was an opportunity when the company I was working for had a change in the number of people. And it was an opportunity for me to go down to 3 days a week. So I took that opportunity with my wife to start our own business, which we do sort of three things with, actually, because we're not ambitious enough with one. So we're running our own startup where my wife is building an app for parents that helps them find and do things together. We also do I do CTO coaching, which is probably my favorite part of the role that I do, helping CTOs level up to become, from when they first move into the role to becoming ready to be that executive contributor at the highest level. And I also work as a fractional CTO, so all the experience with a fraction of the cost.
Interesting about this change. So you've witnessed both sides of this, like working for a company, now being fractional, like entrepreneur now. Now you're with your wife. That's obviously better than being alone. But even so, it's a lot of work for only two people. And how do you feel there are the advantages and disadvantages? I have a lot of clients actually thinking about taking this step into fractional CTO now or in the future. So how do you see the difference between these two lifestyles and options, career options?
Yeah, I mean, it is quite a big difference. It's quite a big step. And I would say that there's a lot of people who look at it as a lifestyle change. And I'd say that to make it a lifestyle change, you've had to have had quite a bit of life beforehand, the experience to go into it. So from my perspective, one of the biggest changes is that if you think about a normal organization and the number of people there are in there and what they do, there's quite a lot of headcount set aside for sales, marketing, and developing business. And so therefore, when you think about yourself as a solo entrepreneur or a small business, you have to have this roughly the same proportion set aside also to marketing and sales. And so this is one of those areas where most people think, oh, I work for myself. I just do what I do well. But if you're relying on the fractional world, you have to constantly find new customers in new areas. And so therefore, the overhead that you need in terms of marketing and sales is a lot higher than people expect. And I'll be honest, I made a mistake there as well, went into it thinking, this will be easy. And, for the first year or so, I was able to get good work based on my existing networks and connections. But like all good things, that comes to an end at some point. And so I spent the first half of this year with my wife really doubling down on understanding how to position myself, sell myself, and find new work.
Yes, you're right. It's a total different positioning. And this is something that I think that the experience as a consultant, because I've done this trajectory myself from a head of HR to coach and consultant. So this, I think for me, the most challenging part is actually selling. So we love what we do and we want to spend more time doing that. And it's easy to postpone those activities that we don't like that much. And the positioning is also different. So once you are, but I think they're coming together now. In the old days, I think that people that were working for a company, they didn't worry that much about their LinkedIn positioning, about posting, or about sending their message outside their company, outside the reach of their immediate stakeholders. And now I've seen some CTOs who work, not fractionally, who work for a company, actually working more as a salesperson, as an entrepreneur inside of their own company. Having a clear value proposition will help not just fractional get new clients, but will help CTOs get better talents, help the company attract those talents, because most of the people, they leave companies because of their leaders, because of their bosses, better saying. And the other way around also works. They can be attracted by that profile, they can be attracted by that leader and want to join your company because they want to work with you. And how do you see that difference in positioning from before and now?
No, I mean, you're absolutely right that everybody wants to be able to attract people rather than to have people running away from them, don't they? But in terms of the positioning, I think I see two sort of kinds of CTOs at work there, broadly from that point of view. Those CTOs who work for a sort of a developer first organization where their customers are other tech engineering type people, perhaps where it's the product is something that is quite deep in the technical stack or something that is going to be used primarily by developers as the primary users or primary buyers of their product. Those kinds of CTOs need to be much more forward facing because they're the credibility for other technical people to buy from them. And then the other side is sort of the other two flavors of CTOs, which we see quite often, is the sort of the technically oriented CTOs and the sort of business oriented CTOs. And those are the ones whereby, yeah, their positioning and their outward facing profile is about attracting talent, is about trying to find the good engineers who fit what they need to at a cost of acquisition, a retention, and a value in the market that makes their business easier to do because they can find and retain the great people that put together a great team.
I totally agree with you. And I think that tech leaders who want to become CTOs or actually are now CTOs are not that concerned as they should be with their LinkedIn position, which is a shame. Now, I want to know a little bit about this whole experience of yours, not just being a CTO, but helping other CTOs. What skills led to your success in the C-suite? How do you got there where everybody wants to be?
Well, I guess from my perspective, I got to the C-suite by becoming a founder. So it's quite a deliberate position from my perspective. I was working for a larger organization, a company called Palantir, and I'd been there for just under 4 years and experienced that hypergrowth phase of going through massive, massive growth in terms of number of employees, number of customers, the amount of revenue had coming in. And, I was concentrated on very much on one customer and working with them. And after a while, it got to the point where I was thinking, well, I can do a little bit more than this. I can go a bit broader than this. But I also, again, it was about an opportunity where I went out looking to see if I could find some people who were, with the right mind. And I spoke to a lot of founders. And then eventually I'd spoken to this guy probably 3 or 4 times, and he thought he'd made a decision on who was going to be his co-founder and CTO. And he just went back through his list, and I was one of those few people. So he got in touch with me on a Sunday, and I said, great, let's meet up. So we met on the Monday, and we were pretty much, rolling the next week. So it was kind of opportunistic, but it was also an active decision on my part to create the environment where the luck could happen, right? So we all say that luck is where opportunity meets preparation. I was prepared. I was ready for it. I knew what I wanted to do, and the opportunity came along, grabbed it with both hands and went for it. And it wasn't that it's rocky bits at the beginning. I think whenever you make a significant change like that, it isn't easy. But I think the work that we put in together into that early stage of the startup and putting it to come together, and having my eyes open to what it was that I would need to do to step up to be a business-oriented technologist and to look at all of the aspects from raising funds, building a team, building a product, technical architecture, and understanding the customers to a really in-depth way. I think being able to do all of that was the bit that allowed us to really go. And it only wasn't without its challenges. I was relying on learning I'd had from previous roles. And the other thing that I did was I joined a mentorship program as well, Startup Bootcamp. And that really helped me. There was 2 things that it helped me with. One was, hey, look, I'm not alone in this. There are other people going through the same emotions, the same roller coasters, the same bottlenecks and blockers. But also to be able to talk to people and say, hey, I'm thinking of doing this. And this is my thinking. And them going, yeah, you're crazy. Or, oh, okay, that seems like a good idea. That sounds like something that I've heard of other people do elsewhere. So just sort of a balance against the sort of roller coaster of emotions that can happen in your own mind if it's not anchored with other folks, other experience, and people who are slightly ahead of you on that curve. And that sort of led me into where I am now, which is trying to help other people not go through that really rocky period at the beginning, where you're not quite sure what's going on and whether you're doing the right thing and whether you're worried about the right problems. And that's what I try and bring into the coaching, because it's the bit that I felt most keenly as if only I had had that in a good way. So that's where I come to it from the coaching perspective.
I love that you actually are talking about emotional intelligence. So the first thing I noticed about your trajectory, about your story, is proactivity and risk taking. Most technical people are conflict avoidant and they are risk avoidant. So they want to know that the next step is going to be sure, is going to be certain. And I think that if you want to get to the C level, you have to take some chances. You have to understand, you have to have this broader view of an organization or of the environment. In your case, the organizational awareness part was spread to the environment part. So you got a very good reading of the environment and a very good notion and a clear vision of what you wanted to become. And to get there, you need some of these amazing emotional intelligence skills, which is understanding self-awareness, understanding what you really want, understanding what you're scared of and what can take you off the path, and getting support and understanding that this is a new path for you and you're going to start again. And this notion that you're starting over comes with a level of humbleness.
Yes,
To
absolutely.
ask for this help and
Yeah.
actually get the support group. And these are three things that usually tech leaders avoid: getting help, taking risks, and actually understanding their own feelings. Would you agree with that? Do you also see these traits on other tech leaders?
I've seen it a couple of times, yes. And I do think you're absolutely right that the preparation and self-knowledge, self-awareness that you're going to be changing roles, changing skill sets, and that just acknowledging that you're not actually ready for it, I think is a big step towards being open to, okay, what are the things that I do need to learn? And what are the things I do need to accept that I'm going to do a not so great job out at the beginning as I learn. I think one way to consider it, a lot of technologists will be familiar with the idea of the MVP, the minimum viable product. And as stepping into the CTO role, in fact, it's the same, I think, when you're stepping from an individual contributor engineering role into a leadership role or management role. And it's the same when you step from that management or leadership role into the CTO role. It's an equivalent jump. You're stepping up into a new role for which you aren't quite ready. You've got some of the skills, but you don't have all of the experience and you don't have all of the knowledge. So understanding that you're switching almost career tracks to do that, and there's a new set of things that you can and should learn, some of which you can learn on the job by experience and making mistakes and learning that way, and some of which you can accelerate by learning from others, and that can be from blogs and writings on the internet, but sometimes it's quicker to learn from somebody who is there alongside you, can talk to you about it, can ask you the questions that help you figure things out, or simply just teach you, okay, there's this framework here that you would do well to look at because it probably applies to your situation. But I think you're right in terms of those three things. It's the awareness of where you are, it's the acknowledgement you're going to be making a step up, and the humility to realize that it's such a big change that you're not going to be expected to be perfect when you step into this role. Because I think that also helps set the tone with others around you, the CEO that you start working with, or the rest of the executive team. Because I think that's the other thing. You're stepping into a new team. Your new first team is that executive team, and the engineers are no longer your first level of peers. And that's another of those big changes that happen because the language that you use changes. Engineers speak in a idiomatic technological speak where there's a lot of baseline understanding that's needed there. You step up into the C-suite, the baseline language is finance. And so having that basic vocabulary of the finance, what all the words mean and how you talk, it's going to take time to pick that up. And I think for some engineers coming from fintech, they've got an unfair advantage in that respect, right? Some of the financial terms are more familiar. But for most CTOs stepping into the role for the first time, they're probably coming from an environment where the finance knowledge, language, baseline expectations, and assumptions are quite new to them.
Yes, I know. And you touched a very dear topic for me, which is communication, which I think is one of the skills that tech leaders are lacking of. So, and that's the exact reason. Communication in the end becomes a habit. You're not paying attention to the way you're communicating every day. It's impossible. It's like breathing. You can pay attention to some aspects of your communication, but not entirely. But if you assess, when I assess CTO's communication, usually what I find is that they reinforce this tech jargons and this way of speaking for a long time, and they grab they they grab that because they feel they were successful like this. They became thought leaders. They are rewarded. They are admired for that. So letting go is a big part of growth. You have to let go of that former identity and understand you're stepping into a new role with a different kind of communication is needed. The financial, as you say, it's absolutely necessary, and that you have to learn again. And this, you will only do that if you focus on one behavior at a time. One thing that I keep strengthening during the podcast with all my clients is that you don't change communication entirely, focusing on a lot of things at the same time, because it's too hard. And then you give up. And usually that's what happens when you get a feedback. People say, okay, so you speak tech jargon too much. We need you to change your communication. Change your communication. That's not like that. Changing communication is about changing habits. So it's about finding the new habits that's going to leverage you the most in the communication in the C-suite. And one of the habits that I think is one of the most important is focusing on benefits. So write whatever you want to write, write your message the way it's natural to you. Then review your message and check how focused it is on end results and what you can actually remove from tech jargon and from the how process, which is not very interesting for that audience, the C-suite audience, but it's super useful for your team. So you can still have this language, but you have to broaden your communication to be able to communicate with different stakeholders. And this means empathy. And you can
Absolutely.
only get empathy by connecting with people that are different from you. That's why I think that only reading books won't get you there. You actually need to hear from other people, and you need the support. You need people to help you, not just books.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, if you think about children, when they move from one school to another, there'll be different words that are used in the playground. There'll be some words that mean a different thing in this new playground. And kids take a while to get used to, what's the right language I should use. And they try hard to fit in. And I think it's the same kind of approach we need to make when we're moving from the technical environment to the business environment. And I like what you said about empathy, because one of the ways of getting empathy is to mirror what other people do and learn from them and try and copy their behaviors. The difference, I think, with a CTO stepping into that environment from somebody like coming from maybe marketing or sales into the executive environment is that they have a background in very similar kind of things. So finance and sales, they're talking about money, they're talking about revenue. A lot of the things are the same. Whereas when you're coming from technology to the financial environment in the C-suite, it's a bigger jump, it's a bigger shift. And I think one of the things that I use as a mental model for that is not sort of letting go of the tech. You're in that position because you're good at the tech, because you can talk tech. The bit you need to pick up, you need to add to your environment is how to play in this new playground. You need to add the financial language. And one of the key things that you can bring, therefore, is the ability to translate between the two. And if you look at so you're talking about reviewing your communication, about the words you've used and who it's going to go to and the impact it's going to have. I think of it in terms of, is my writing translating between the domain in the right direction for which boundary this is crossing? Is it going from tech to business? Therefore, have I pitched this in the business language, or is this going from business to tech? So therefore, do I need to translate the business goals into technical language that is easily understood and internalized by those tech people quickly? Or are they going to gloss over it and not really understand when I'm talking about profit margins and revenue targets and etc. So I think it's about that translation. And I think the empathy comes in from the point of view of who's the recipient of this particular message, which is the language that I should be using for that, and have I translated the concepts and the words adequately across that boundary? And that then becomes, that's why you're the CTO. You're that interface between the leadership team and the technology. And I think if you take that as your first steps, a lot of the other things that you sort of were saying about, empathy and understanding where it's coming from, you're in the right place now. Using that translation as a mechanism is a good way. And one of the most useful tools I use is using metaphors. right? So the business needs to achieve goals by a certain date. Okay, we need to have it's like getting the release out in time to be able to blah blah blah. It's so using a metaphor in translation in different directions can help shortcut the translation between the two domains, and yet can still keep it relevant and easily understood when the other person is hearing the other side of their language.
Metaphors are super powerful, psychologically speaking. They have the power to get to the feelings, to get to the emotions, which just a speech and just knowledge, just transmitting knowledge is, it doesn't get there. So I think it's a waste of time, a waste of potential to think of communication just as passing on information. It's so much more than that. It's about building trust. It's about building connections. And you're totally right. Metaphors will get you there. If you find the right metaphor to explain that, you can bring back past emotions. Be careful not just to make metaphors with family. For instance, I don't like this metaphor of companies as family groups, because you don't fire family members. You don't assess their performance. So that doesn't make sense. And there's another reason why I don't like this metaphor. And as head of HR, I fought this very strongly with the C-suite, because a lot of people have bad experiences with their families. So it's not a good thing for everyone. So you could be evoking bad feelings and resistant. So as long as you stay away from the family metaphor, I think you're safe to use metaphors to make this translation. This is an amazing idea. So Adam, what I want to hear more about is about the app that you're building with your wife. And I have some kind of issues here. So first of all, why building an app with your wife? Why did you decide? A lot of clients of mine are thinking of taking this path as well, of going solo, and they want to, and I've thought about that myself, because my husband is an architect, an IT architect. So we thought about putting something together, and we thought about a lot of reasons not to do it. Why did you decide to partner with your wife?
I mean, the short version is it comes down to scratching our own itch, right? So we've lived in quite a few different countries. My wife, I think now is up to 8 countries that she's lived in. So we've been moving environments quite a lot. We have 3 kids together. One was born in London, one was born in Edinburgh, and one was born here in Gothenburg in Sweden. And so we've moved around and then had to find our local places, our environments, our places to go quite a few times and in different places. And we've realized that finding where to go is a mixture of searching Google for sort of the information that there is available on there. You don't always know whether you've got, the facilities you're going to need. Is there a changing table? Is there a ramp for me to get in? Is there a lift to get to the top floor? You don't always know if, the food that you need is going to be accommodated there in that place, because that information isn't really available on Google, because it's just where to go rather than where to go with kids, with your family. It changes so fast. When you've got a 3-month-old, a 9-month-old, a 1-year-old, a 3-year-old, what you need changes really rapidly over that time period. And the other thing is that when you're looking for places, often you get into an environmental location and there'll be that one person. There's that connector person who knows all the great things to do. They keep up with the events that are happening. They spend a lot of time going out with their kids, and they come up with the most fabulous days out. And then you need to do it for yourself, and it's not always available. You can't just go and call up that person and go, hey, I need a day out where I can take my husband and me and our 3 kids, and they need these things. And so there's a need. And whenever we've spoken to other parents, like, oh wow, yeah, I'm in this city and I could really do with that. When parents first become parents and they have kids for the first time, often they're in that scenario where I either have to rely on just the friends around them, which is relatively small pool of people who've got kids and have a recent enough experience to say, oh, we went to this place. And then, so that's kind of the need. So why did we decide to build it together? Well, because we really understand what it is that we're trying to solve. And it's a problem that we've seen again and again. And it's why hasn't it been solved up until now? Well, because it's not an easy problem to solve. It's a data problem at the bottom. Where do you find out this information? Well, all those parents who are doing these things and taking their kids to places, they're the ones who have the data, but it's too hard for them to share it. So that's what we want to try and do, is make an easy way for it to be shared amongst everybody. And why build it together? Well, we're looking at sort of how we could build a company and hire lots of people and build a team. But I think just over the last few years, the barriers to doing and building things have absolutely plummeted. I mean, if I look back to early in my career, you wanted to build an app. Okay, you need some venture capital money because you need to build a team of 8 people to actually build this thing. Then you need a team of 4 or 5 people to sell this thing. So, okay, we need a team of 15 just to get going. Whereas now, where we are with the ability to build software has dropped massively. You can build a credible app with a couple of people over a few months. And the direction is continuing that way. Now we use AI tools. We can build an app with one person over 1 month, and we can have something incredible up and running. So we've actually gone back to the drawing board on what we're doing. With the advent of ChatGPT and OpenAI, because we sort of thought, well, we could build it a more traditional way, or we could just be at that point, we were just completely forward looking. Where do we think the puck is going to? Right? Wayne Gretzky always says, skate to where the puck is going, not where it is now. So we're thinking, well, take a leaf out of that book. He's done pretty well in his career. So we're thinking, okay, we're gonna actually start building it completely AI first, with minimal possible manpower put into it from the point of view of human resources, but leverage the AI resources, the technical resources that there are available as much as we can, and actually bake that into the product and the way it's worked as well. Because I think people are much more used to now thinking about just saying things to their phone and getting something back as usable answers and results. And while those might be the early adopters right now, scoot forward 6-9 months, it'll probably become the norm. I expect that we'll see some big things from Apple, which will lead the industry again coming out this summer. So I think the changes are happening. And so that's why we think just the two of us is going to be enough to build it. But the two of us working together hasn't been, all roses and easygoing. We've had to figure out, because you were talking before about, well, when you have a family, the expression I have is that family is like unconditional love, right? You never fire your family members. And I think when you're building a team, it's much more like, well, we got these, performance benchmarks. There's expectations, and if you don't meet those expectations, well, we need another different team member that is going to hit that, so that our team is working. When you're mixing those two things together, it's a bit of a clash. And so we've had to figure out, some of the best ways that we work together, so we're not rubbing each other up the wrong way. So we understood we've got the same levels of expectations. And I think that's fairly normal, but it's one of those things that is the barrier to why a lot of people, when they are a couple, when they're family working together, I mean, I know a few large extended families who have family businesses, and it's one of the benefits and one of the challenges of having a family business is those tensions in the family are also in the business. And it's a very different dynamic within the working environment as well.
What I just interviewed last week for the podcast as well, a co-founder, but the non-technical co-founder that also partnered with her husband. So I get a different perspective. Is your wife a technical person or a non-technical person?
She's not software technical, but she's very technical from the point of view of having built things. So she has her major background in the med tech environment and spent a large part of her early career in startups, designing, building, producing med tech devices that go inside the body. So very high standards of build quality, design criteria, and testing.
Yeah.
And so he's used to working with small teams to build something, deliver it, and get through quality gateways. So she's very, very good on things like process, on standards, and on methodology. So we complement each other really well in that respect. But she also has a good understanding of what it means to build and deliver things, which I think is actually quite important when you're trying to do that together.
It is. It's important to have different skills, that you can do different things, and that you can share easily the responsibilities, like understanding the decision process. When I coach founders, the first thing I do is assessment of the possible clashes that they can have. So I make an assessment of individual, like the personality, the style of the person, the leadership style, so we can foresee what can probably happen and already decide ways in which to solve that situation. For instance, one of the things that I worked with the last group that I had with 3 founders, and they were all doing mostly the same thing, and some things were being left behind, and they were like accusing each other or getting lost or demotivated to work together. And it was just a matter of understanding how they aligned in their mission. What's the connection there? It's not just that they in that case they were friends. It's not that you were friends. that's connecting you. Is the product that you're delivering, is the service that you're delivering, is the mission, the legacy that you want to deliver. And once you get that, that's the bond. That's the glue that's going to hold you when you get you will get to conflicts. You will have conflicts. So when you get to the conflicts, how are you going to solve it? And it's so much easier when each one has a responsibility and has the final say, and you have a decision-making process already in place before that conflicts and that disagreements come to take place.
And I think you're exactly right. And we for our approach, we tackled that very early on, right at the very beginning. We decided, so what roles are we each going to have? So my title is CTO. And so her title is CVO, which would normally, I think, be called the CEO. So she calls it Chief Visionary Officer. But she's the one who has the vision. She has this is what we're aiming for. And every now and again, I just need reminding of that. And I think that's absolutely fine and that's okay. But I think that just having that as the role of she is the one with the vision, and it's the vision, that's the vision that I am driving towards along with her. I think that has helped us overcome some of the challenges we've had. We can always go back to that as the principal point. That's where we're going to. We both agree on that. And so, the tension that we're finding in various places, I'm probably overblowing. It doesn't happen that often that we have tension, but we know there's small times that we do. Okay, yeah, that's where we're going to, and that's the bit that's important. And so we'll just resolve it and move on.
I just have one more question regarding this, because it's a personal
It
curiosity.
is fascinating, I can tell.
I'm sorry. What about the income? You're putting together both incomes, and that's a lot of risk taking. Like you're both betting on the same basket, putting your bags on the same basket. How do you feel about that level of risk?
I mean, from that perspective, that was never really a question or an issue with us. We met just under 10 years ago. We've had 3 kids. Janine has been not working for quite a long time, as we've had 3 very young kids. And so we come into this position with me having the primary income for a while. We're both all in on the house that we own. We're both all in on everything else. So that really wasn't much of a discussion from our perspective. That's just the way it is.
Okay, great. So we're approaching the end, unfortunately, because I think I have so many things to ask you. But I promise that this would be a very quick podcast, very objective podcast, and we have opportunities to do a second interview. What I would like to know is, I would like you now to give a content recommendation. Do you have any book, podcast, or something that you would recommend for leaders wanting to become CTOs or fractional CTOs?
So I think from my perspective, there's one book that I really love talking to people about, and it's what you were talking about early on about switching role. It's about a mindset shift into a leadership position, and it's something that I was actually put onto by one of my bosses at my previous companies, and when I read it, I loved it. It's a book called Turn the Ship Around by David L. Marquette, who was a submarine captain in the Pacific U.S. Navy fleet. And he was used to the sort of the command and control structured approaches of the way that the Navy works. But he had a boat that was basically struggling and failing near the bottom of the rankings, as he put it. And the story is about how he turned the ship around from that perspective by taking one key principle. And that's turning from people sort of, I have done this and is that okay, to I intend to do this, as a way of reporting upwards. And with the leaders, hoping that people come to them and saying that I intend to do these things, so that the leader can hopefully just say, great, good. Or, oh, have you thought about this other thing? Have you considered that? What are the connections here? But it's about that mentality of getting all the people who are, in your care to get to the point where they are driving that initiative of I intend to, rather than are you okay with what I've done? And it's a mentality shift, and it's one that I think it has to start at the top. And as somebody going into a leadership position, I think it's it's a short book as well. It's nice and quick to read. It's a good story. It's easy to go through. And I also think because it's got one key simple takeaway, it's quite powerful in its impact. And I think for people stepping up into a leadership role, it's a good one to read.
Yeah, it's all about developing emotional intelligence, especially relationship management. Sorry. So it's all about developing emotional intelligence and social skills like relationship management in the skill of coaching and mentoring. So in the Daniel Goleman's framework of emotional intelligence, you have this skill which is coaching and mentoring for leaders. And I think this is the coaching part, where you become more of a coach and more asking more questions than actually giving orders. And this is something that actually tech leaders need to learn. And I'm super thankful that you mentioned this book.
Yeah.
So Adam, if people want to connect with you and reach out to you, how can they do that?
Yeah, I'm available on LinkedIn. So LinkedIn/in/Adam Horner. I'm also launching a podcast shortly, which is the CTO Playbook. So that will be coming out later on this month. Later on in June. And then the other way of reaching me is through CTO Craft, which is a community of CTOs and senior tech leaders, originally based in the UK, but is now going global very rapidly. And I run Mixer events, which are basically social events for CTOs across Sweden. So we've got one coming up in Gothenburg and another one coming up in Stockholm in mid-June.
That's a great thing. You know, I'm finishing today my course, the CTO Craft campus. So I'm putting together a course about emotional intelligence for CTOs. And I'm just finishing the final details, and I'm going to send to the CTO Craft today. So we're going to be partners there.
Excellent. I look forward to seeing that in campus soon.
So Adam, thank you very much for this interview. And I hope to see you more here in the Tech Mind Insights. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much for having me. It's been great.